This is Inside the Right. Tim, we have some bad news for Donald Trump today. The New York Times Siena poll was just released, often looked at as pretty much the gold standard in national and battleground polling. And it looks like as of right now, Kamala Harris has a 93-point net advantage with Democratic voters. Donald Trump, meanwhile, has an 80-point net advantage with Republicans. That means that he's only seeing 80% support among Republicans. The rest of them are either undecided or are supporting Kamala Harris. So there is a major disparity here, a 13-point edge in party ID toward Kamala Harris. How much of a blinking red light is this for Donald Trump as we head into this final home stretch, these last 4 weeks toward the election?
Yeah, it's a big problem. And I think that the fact that it's New York Times poll gives it a little more weight because the New York Times poll has been pretty tough on Democrats all year. I think Nate Cohn does a really good job of explaining himself. Polls are not magic, but just, just if you're kind of comparing it to past polls, you're seeing positive progress for Harris, and you're particularly seeing it among two groups: older white voters, because some of them are traditionally Republican, but some independent, and these Republican Nikki Haley voters that we talk about on the show. Up to she's getting 9% of self-identified Republicans. Now, if you look at exit polls for 2020, Biden only got 6%. So this is a big difference to move up 3 percentage points. So that's a noteworthy gap. And I think that you're seeing that particularly in these key states, and that her gains are coming from groups that over-index in these states. Like, this is the other big takeaway from the New York Times poll, is that the Republicans have had this huge advantage in the swing states versus in the popular vote, right? So there's this worry that Kamala wins the popular vote, but Trump wins the Electoral College. Well, these types of voters that Kamala was improving with, the Nikki Haley voters, the older kind of white voters, older traditional Republicans, there are more of them in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan than there are in the rest of the country, just by percentage. And so it's helping that as well. And so even though this poll didn't really show the upper Midwest, it signals a good sign for her among a key demo that she's going to win on her easiest path to victory, which is just to win those blue wall states plus the Omaha congressional district.
Tim, you worked in these campaigns in the past. Clearly, Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita must know this. And so why take the strategy that they're taking, which is to just double down on the extremism, on the base, when the people that they need to be reaching out to, the Wall Street Journal types, the suburban, soft, squishy Republicans, when they're moving over to Kamala Harris by virtue of the campaign Kamala's running?
Yeah, I don't think that the candidate is capable of it when it comes down to.
Right.
And if you listen to Susie Wiles, she's convinced herself that they can offset this by doing well with younger Black and brown men, basically, like 18 to 30, maybe 40-year-old Black and brown men who, particularly working class. And maybe, maybe, who knows, right? But there are a couple of problems with that. Like, one is just traditionally, older white voters are more reliable voters. For part of the reason they got nothing to do. Older Black voters are also more reliable voters. Older voters are just more reliable. This isn't even so much about race, right? So this group, so Kamala is now picking up ground with a much more reliable voter group. So, but I think that the Harris, I think if you asked the Trump campaign, if you asked Wiles and LaCivita and they give you truth serum, it's like, we can't do this. Our guy is going rogue on Putin. I mean, did you see the new Woodward story coming out? Him and Putin have had 7 private calls. Our guy is just not going to appeal to upper income, college educated white voters as much. Some of them voted for him, obviously, but to the same degree as past Republicans. There's a group of them that are going to be turned off. We're seeing that in the New York Times poll. The question was kind of how many of those people could you get over to Kamala, right? You knew a lot of those people were maybe going to leave the top ticket blank, but could Kamala expand that from that 6% that Biden won to get up closer to 10% by getting people that maybe were on the fence last time, maybe they wrote in someone, by pushing them over to actively supporting her. And there's some evidence in this poll that is happening and that she's making gains, real gains in that demo.
Now, we've seen a whole raft of otherwise prominent Republicans coming out and endorsing Kamala Harris. We have resistance hero Dick and Liz Cheney. We have Stephanie Grisham, Olivia Troy. A lot of these Republicans, even people who've worked in the Trump administration, have come out recently. There's the business leaders for Harris, another traditionally conservative grouping of people, has come out for Harris. And I know people will look at this and say, well, how much of a constituency does somebody like Liz Cheney still command? So what's your reaction when you hear people ask a question like that?
Yeah, I mean, not enough of a constituency to win the Republican Party or Republican primary, unfortunately, as you saw, where Nikki Haley's getting in the teens or low or high single digits, even in some states, but enough of a constituency to make a difference. I like, look,
Right.
why did Georgia, people say, why did Biden win Georgia, a state that Democrats hadn't won in decades? And someone left will say, well, Stacey Abrams and the outreach that they did on voter registration, expanding the black vote. And I say, yes, like that was a key part of it. Yeah, for sure. But like that still wasn't enough. Like if you look at the math, like you needed to get people that had been traditionally Republicans to flip. And like that's what you got in the Atlanta suburbs of Georgia, like just enough of them to put over the edge. Maybe it's only 2-3% of the electorate, but like enough to make the difference between winning and losing. That's what you saw in 2020 in Georgia. That's the same group you're looking for now, also in Georgia. But really, the top priority is focusing on the suburbs of those upper Midwest states. And I just if I'll do a little plug, the Bulwark, we're doing a tour with a bus tour with some of those Never Trumpers to try to nudge this forward next week. The 17th in Philly, the 18th in Pittsburgh, the 19th in Detroit. So if you're in one of those cities, you can check out thebulwark.com. We've got the event details, and we're going to be bringing out, some of the former Trump staffers, like you mentioned, the Cassidy Hutchinsons, George Conway's coming with us, Adam Kinzinger, for this to do media, to like make people. Again, we're not talking to swing voters. We're not talking to potential Trump voters. We're talking to that small group of people that like still considers himself a Republican, is not going to vote for Trump, but is just not sure if they can get there for Kamala. We're hoping that bus tour, also what we're doing on YouTube and other places, and the Republican Voters Against Trump ads can kind of just nudge some of those people over to saying, all right, well, this time I'll proactively be for Kamala. And that could be the difference, as we're seeing this New York Times poll, between getting 6% and 9% of the GOP demo.
Right, especially when these elections are won, 10,000, 12,000 voters in just a few of these swing states.
11,000 famously
11, yeah.
in Georgia.
On the flip side of this good news for Kamala in terms of being able to kind of consolidate support among a lot of these soft Republican voters is the fact that we've now seen Elon Musk come out recently and kind of throw his weight behind Donald Trump. He obviously commands a lot of the attention of the younger demo. Is there any worry for you in terms of seeing Elon kind of offer something of a gateway for a lot of these young white male voters who may not otherwise have been interested in politics or engaged in politics to then get that permission structure that way to come on board and vote for Trump?
Yeah, I am worried about it. I think that what we're not seeing, as you see in the New York Times poll, is them bringing over active Democrats, right? I mean, like my colleague at the blog, Mark Caputo, wrote about how Trump's answer to Liz Cheney is putting forth RFK and Tulsi and being like, Democrats, come on over. But it's like, Democrats don't like RFK and Tulsi, right? So that's not working, okay? So they're not making any inroads with Democrats. Are they making inroads with like younger independents who really don't have a very well-defined political worldview yet, and are just engaging in it for the first time and don't even really watch political news that much except for on their social media feeds? I'm worried they are making inroads with that group. And I think that, I was happy to see Mark Cuban is kind of out, like going on some of the podcasts to try to speak to this demo as well, repping Harris. I think, as I mentioned in the previous answer, the good news is that's a little bit of a less reliable voter demo than kind of older people who have been in the habit of voting year over year over year. So I think it's a trade that probably works to the Democrats' benefit, but absolutely they should be fighting tooth and nail on the younger voters on campus and speaking to them on issues that matter to them as well.
Right, especially given the fact that while these elections are generally a referendum on issues that impact older people, now it's almost exclusively on issues that impact younger people, whether it's women's reproductive rights, whether it's climate change, whether it's gun safety. I mean, this really, if ever there was an election where young people have an incentive to get involved, it's this one based on the issues that we're facing right now. So again, for those who are watching,
throw out porn banning. They're trying to ban porn as well.
Yeah,
that's something that may or may not impact a group of young men. So that's just something to think about as well.
No, it's true though. With that said, again, for those who are watching right now, to support the work that Tim and his colleagues do over at the Bulwark, and to learn more about the bus tour, I'll put the link to their YouTube channel right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Please, if you're not yet subscribed, head over there and subscribe. The channel is doing extraordinarily well, and it also offers a permission structure for these longtime Republicans, longtime independents, to know that there is a community of like-minded people and that you are not obligated to vote for Donald Trump just because you voted for Republicans in the past. So check out the channel. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Tim Miller.
This is Inside the Right.